Hello and welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be a landscape using ink and wash, and it's going to be quite a quick one, really just to try out this new watercolour pad that I have and see how much water it can take and how much I like this paper. But I'm also trying out today a new microphone. I noticed last week when I was doing a voiceover that the audio was a bit sort of squeaky. I don't know if you noticed that. If you want to let me know in the comments below if you can tell if this one's better. So this is just a microphone I've bought this weekend and I'm using for the first time, different to the one I've used before, which was just the internal one on the laptop. So if you do notice a difference, if you let me know, and I'll carry on using this new one. So to begin with, I'm using the Pip Pen, so that's the Artist Pip Pen, P-I-T-T, and it's the size small. And I'm just doing an imaginary landscape. You'll see that I've done a margin around it, and I'm using the pen to do a few mountains and some trees, just some fir trees in the distance. You can see by the size of the trees that they're a long way in the distance, so we're not going to be putting any detail in this drawing at all. So it's just a series of lines completely out of my head, just getting that point at the top of the trees and making them wider at the bottom, so we get the impression that they're fir trees rather than any others, but very much in the distance and very impressionistic and far away. So the paper that I'm using is the Daler Rowney Aquafine texture paper, and it's a watercolour one, £140, and it's the cold press one. I did use this last week with the acrylic inks, but this is the first time that I'm using it with watercolours. And I was quite pleased with it. For a practice pad, there's 12 sheets in it, and it wasn't very expensive, I don't think, and it does hold quite a bit of water. You'll see that I wet the whole paper to begin with before I put any colours on, and it took that water quite well, and it worked well. So I'm quite happy with it. The texture isn't too much that you can't draw accurately on top of it. So yeah, I would recommend it. It's a nice paper. I perhaps used a little bit too much water in places. You'll see one or two cauliflowers. But I didn't actually mind that. I quite like the way the colours merged together on the paper, and I wanted to keep it quite impressionistic because this landscape is distant, it's far away, so we're not going to see all that detail, so I was happy for the colours to merge together. And the paints I used for this one were the Sennelier paints that I've been using quite a bit. It's a little travel set that I bought earlier this year that I've been using when I've been outside, and I love the brightness of the colours. So the colours I used, I'll just go through those. Orange, lemon yellow and French vermilion were the ones that I used in the sky. Now, I don't only use these in the sky, I allow them to come down into the landscape as well. I think when you've got a sunset or a sunrise, it's really nice to have those colours further down into the foreground as well, just so that it brings the whole painting together and it makes it quite harmonious, because you are going to get some reflections from the sky in your landscape, especially if there's a bit of dew or you've got some water there might be some reflections. And because it's imaginary, we're not sure, there may be some ponds and things there where it's reflecting. But if you bring those warm colours of the sky down into the landscape and then put your extra colours over the top once that's dry, they will still shine through and it still makes the whole painting work well together. So I set off, I put the lemon yellow on, you'll see, and then I added the orange and let those colours merge together on the paper, which was already wet, and that worked quite well. I'm more pleased with the sky actually than I was with the foreground. I think perhaps I should have re-wet the foreground and worked more quickly maybe and allowed the colours to merge more. They looked a bit sort of static. I should have allowed those to merge more on the paper, the foreground colours, but it was just a practice really to see how this paper worked, both working wet in wet and wet on dry. And like I said, it did take quite a lot of water. You'll see I've got a nice big brush which holds plenty of water, and it worked well with that. So the colours in the foreground, because it's imaginary, I did go a bit over the top with my colours. They're quite bright, but I love these bright paints of the Sennelier range. So it was dioxazine purple, if that's how you pronounce it, I'm not sure, and vermilion was the furthest away mountain, which I had those two colours mixed together. So the same French vermilion that I used in the sky. And then the phthalo blue with the purple added was the next sort of mountain range across. And then to make the green in the foreground, which was a very bright, unnatural green really, that you perhaps wouldn't normally use, was the phthalo blue and the lemon yellow. And the reason I use this lemon yellow is because I've been using it so much. You can probably tell if you look at the palette there, you perhaps can't see on there that I'm using that up quite quickly because it's such a lovely colour. I love the way the pigments push the other pigments out of the way, and you can really add a touch of light and brightness back to a painting when you're losing it. So I really love that lemon yellow. I'm using it a lot. You'll see that I allowed that to dry before I did the foreground. I allowed the background of the sky to dry, and those little bits of yellow and lemon that I put in the foreground as well. So it will obviously dry quite a bit lighter, and then I came to put the foreground on using those different blues and purples. I could have made those a bit, it added more water and made them fade away more, but I wanted to make it quite a strong little painting, and when it is imaginary it doesn't really matter. It's just having a bit of fun with the paints and enjoying using these strong colours. But you'll see as I'm putting the purple and blues on that those dry yellows and oranges that are behind still shine through, and that actually starts to form some shapes in the mountains, which could be peaks and troughs that are casting shadows and things. One thing I would say I really did like about this paper is it's quite easy to lift off. I do a lot of lifting off. You'll see I lifted off a little bit of pigment in the centre of the sky there to make it look as if that was where the sun was, where the very brightest part of the painting altogether is where the white paper is, where I lifted off. And it lifted off really easily. Obviously some colours lift off better than others, and I've probably talked about this before in previous videos. Red can be quite difficult to lift off because it's a staining, dyeing pigment which sort of sinks right into the paper and dyes the paper, whereas blue is much easier to lift off. So bear that in mind when you're doing your painting, that not all colours lift off as easily. And don't let your red dry, because once your red's dried and then you try to lift it off, you really will struggle, even on a very good quality paper. And again, it depends on the paints. So this all comes back to getting to know your own paints, your own papers, your own brushes, as to how much you can lift off. And again, this is something I've talked about in previous videos, is the importance of getting to know your own materials. Each brush holds a different amount of water. Each type of paper holds a different amount of water. And with watercolour, that is the essential ingredient, is how much water you're adding to your paints and to your paper. You can soon mess things up by having a brush that's holding way too much water and in reintroducing that into the painting. You'll see I do end up with a few cauliflowers in places, but actually I don't mind it. It's you know, I've added some extra water there underneath the hills just to make those colours move down a little bit because it was drying quite quickly. And I do end up with one or two cauliflowers, but sometimes that doesn't actually matter in an imaginary landscape or something like that, because it could end up looking like a cloud or a tree or a shrub. So, you know, just bear that in mind when you're doing things, that you can actually make them into things. So when I added the lemon, I did come back later on, and when you're working wet in wet, you need to keep adding stronger colours, so less water and more pigment, and that way you don't get the cauliflowers. That's the best tip I can give you, really, is when working wet in wet, is to each time have less water and more pigment, and that way you won't get as many mistakes. But I'm just mixing colours as I go along and making some more greens up and things, and one or two of them do make some of those cauliflowers. And at the end I come back and put some of those sky colours into the foreground, just again to make the whole thing harmonious. And some of those are moving more than they maybe should be, but actually I think it looks quite pretty letting all those colours merge on the paper, as I said before. So I think that's probably enough to tell you. I'm not sure. I like doing things out of the head now and again, like I say, just to try things out. If I did this again, I would re-wet that foreground before I put those colours in, and I would perhaps use a bigger brush as well. I'm looking at myself painting now, and I think that's a bit of a small brush to be doing this, because we've not got the detail. It would have been nice just to add those colours and let them flow into each other a bit more and do it a bit more quickly. You can see one or two areas where it's drying. Having said that, this paper works really nice with a dry brush technique. You'll see me in the foreground move the brush across on its side to get a bit of a dry brush technique and a few lines to make the line of the field and things. And it works well with that because it's got that bit of a texture. It sort of picks it up and gives us a bit of variety of line. We don't want it to be too boring and all flat. You'll see there me dragging the paintbrush across the paper. So back to the microphone, which is one reason I was doing this voiceover today. So sometimes I talk as I'm going along, which can be difficult at times, especially if you get distracted by things, people knocking at the door, whatever. It's sometimes much easier for me to do a voiceover afterwards. I like to listen to music as well when I'm painting, so it's quite nice just to paint it and then come back and tell you what I've done. But it'd be nice to know from you what you prefer, if you prefer me talking about it as I'm going along, or if you prefer these voiceovers, and if you've noticed a difference in this microphone, because I really wasn't happy with the audio on both of last week's videos that I did. So that'd be good to, you know, if you could let me know. And I will link this microphone in the description below for any of you who do your own YouTube videos and who would like something similar, because it was very inexpensive and you just plug it into the side of your laptop and it works straight away. There's no software or anything like that. Very quick and easy to use. So I think that's everything. We've talked about the paper, the paints that I used, and again it was a Pip pen that I used, and that's everything. You'll see I just clip it down at the side with the paper clips rather than using any tape, just to be on the safe side in case it cockles up. But this paper didn't cockle up. Like I say, it's taken that water very well for something that was an inexpensive paper. It's done okay. So I will use this again in another video. I've also bought another new pad, so I'll be trying that out next week. I've been buying a lot of new things recently. It seems to be one of those times when everything's run out and needing to be replaced. So I've got 1 or 2 new things to try out for you over the next few weeks, but some new paints and things. So I hope you found that useful, and enjoy the rest of the video. I haven't cut this video at all because I wanted to do a voiceover and talk to you about what was going on. I didn't want to be rushing, so I've not done any cutting or any speeding up, so that gives you a good idea of how long it took to do this little painting. And just to go back to the painting a minute, I have just noticed that I'm putting that yellow wash over at the moment. As I mentioned, I really like that lemon yellow. And it's nice, that centre hill was just a bit flat and boring, and it's a really nice colour just to lay on top of other dry colours and lift them up. So thank you very much for watching. If you're new to my channel, we have new videos out every Monday and Thursday afternoon on a variety of subjects. So some watercolour, but not all watercolour. We do inks, we do brushos, acrylics, oils, all sorts of different things. And if you have something that you'd really like me to do, you can pop that in the comments below and I'll try and get on with that as soon as possible. Also, any comments you have, I will try and get back to you as soon as I can. It may sometimes take a day or two. I like to answer a few comments at once because as my channel has grown, I'm getting more and more comments all the time and it can take a little bit of catching up with. So thank you very much as well to all the new subscribers I've had over the last few weeks, and welcome to my channel. And don't forget, if you hit the bell icon below, then you will get notified when new videos come out. So thank you once again, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon, and bye for now.